Imagine, if you will, that you are holding a cylinder of metal in your hand. It's cold, heavy, maybe a little rough where the grip is textured.
Right, just a dead piece of metal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you press a stud, and suddenly that dead piece of metal is vibrating, it's humming. A beam of pure, contained plasma shoots out.
Hotter than the surface of a star.
Hotter than a star,
Yeah.
capable of cutting through glass doors, deflecting laser bolts, and, cauterizing wounds instantly. It is the lightsaber, the ultimate symbol of a Jedi Knight.
Absolutely.
But here's the question that keeps me up at night. What happens when the construction of that symbol goes wrong? What happens when the tool that is supposed to be an extension of your soul becomes the very thing that destroys you?
It is a terrifying proposition, isn't it? We spend so much time romanticizing the lightsaber. We think of it as this elegant weapon for a more civilized age, to borrow the classic phrase.
I mean, that's what we've always been told.
Yeah. Right. But physically, mechanically, it is a device of immense volatile destruction. It is a directed energy weapon held inches from your own body. And putting one together isn't like assembling a bookshelf from a flat pack store.
No, not at all. If you put a screw in the wrong place on a bookshelf, it might wobble a bit.
Yeah, but if you misalign a focusing crystal in a lightsaber by a micrometer, the consequences are catastrophic.
Catastrophic and permanent. And that is exactly where we are going today. Welcome back to the deep dive. We are cracking open the source material for young Jedi Knights, lightsabers. And honestly, reading this again, I felt like the training wheels didn't just come off.
They were completely incinerated.
Yes, incinerated.
That is a very fair assessment. If the earlier material was all about the wonder of discovering the Force, the magic of moving rocks and sensing feeling.
The fun stuff.
The fun stuff. Well, this deep dive is about the gritty, industrial, and dangerous reality of harnessing that power. We are moving past the introductory phases of Luke Skywalker's Academy. The stakes have fundamentally shifted from pass or fail to life or death.
Just to set the stage for everyone listening, we aren't just talking about failing a test here. We are talking about permanent, physical maiming. We're talking about political assassination attempts involving hive mind insects.
The Bartoks. They are terrifying.
Pure nightmare fuel. And we're talking about the psychological seduction of the dark side. Plus, of course, the literal construction of the most iconic weapon in sci-fi history.
It is a pivotal moment for these characters. Jason, Jaina, Tenel Ka, Lobaka. They are adolescents, essentially, who are being handed the keys to a Ferrari. But the Ferrari is made of lasers, and they are driving it through a minefield.
I love that analogy. So here's our roadmap for this deep dive. We have a lot of ground to cover. First, we're going to break down the specific components and rituals of building a lightsaber. The source material gives us some incredible technical details that I think a lot of casual followers of the lore miss.
Oh, the details on the crystals and the physics of the blade are fascinating.
We really need to get into that.
Yeah.
Then we have to talk about the tragedy, the event that changes everything for the warrior princess, Tenel Ka.
That is a really difficult section to get through, but it is the emotional core of the entire narrative.
Absolutely. From there, we need to look at the parallel rise of a new villain. Because while the Jedi are building, the Shadow Academy is also active. We will analyze the descent of Zek into the dark side. It's a perfect mirror to what's happening with the Jedi kids.
And finally, we are going to leave the jungle moon of Yavin and head to the Hapes cluster. High-stakes politics, assassin bugs, and a battle against a giant seaweed monster.
Which, again, is honestly nightmare fuel. Okay, let's unpack this. We start with the assignment. Master Luke Skywalker gathers the core group and drops a bombshell. It is time to build their lightsabers. Now, usually this happens way later in training, right? Like, you don't give a freshman a lightsaber.
Correct. Traditionally, in the old lore, a Padawan would train for years with training sabers, low-power versions that just sting when they hit you.
Like a severe static shock.
Exactly. You do that before you're ever trusted with the construction of a real lightsaber. It was a rite of passage that marked the transition to a much higher tier of responsibility. But Luke is accelerating the timeline here. He is feeling the pressure.
Why the rush, though? Is he just getting impatient with them?
No, it's out of sheer necessity. Luke knows the Second Imperium is out there. He knows the Shadow Academy is actively recruiting and training Dark Jedi to hunt his students.
Right.
He realizes that he can't protect them forever. He needs them combat ready, faster than he would like. It is a war footing.
He gives them this speech, and it's pretty heavy. He emphasizes that a lightsaber isn't just a weapon, it's a tool, a constant companion. But he explicitly warns them that this thing can cut through anything, including your friends. That feels like heavy foreshadowing.
It is heavy foreshadowing, but it's also very practical advice. Luke actually shares a bit of his own history here to drive the point home. He shows them his green blade, but he mentions it's not his first.
Yeah, he talks about the blue lightsaber, his father's,
The one he lost on Cloud City.
along with his hand.
Exactly. He is trying to demystify the weapon while simultaneously instilling a deep fear of it. He mentions Vader's Scarlet Blade, too. He wants them to understand that holding a lightsaber doesn't make you invincible. In fact, it makes you a target.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts, literally. To build these things, they need a power source, a handle, and the most critical part, the focusing crystal. This is where the source material gets really fascinating because each character approaches this completely differently.
It tells us so much about their psychology. The construction of a lightsaber is basically a psychometric test. Show me how you build your weapon, and I will tell you exactly who you are.
Let's start with Gina Solo. She's the mechanic of the group. Han Solo's daughter, she loves tinkering with engines, so I just assumed she would go out and find a really technically precise crystal somewhere in a cave, but she doesn't go out at all.
No, she makes one.
This is a massive detail. She approaches it scientifically. She decides to use a synthetic crystal.
Now, we should pause on that because in the broader lore, synthetic crystals are usually associated with the dark side. They use them because they are often stronger, and they can force the crystal to bleed red.
Right, the whole bleeding process.
But Jaina isn't doing it for power. She is doing it for control.
Walk me through that process. The source mentions a furnace.
Yes. She uses a high-pressure furnace to create the crystal from raw chemical mixtures. But she doesn't just bake it like a ceramic pot and walk away. She has to sit there in front of this roaring heat and use the force to micromanage the lattice growth of the crystal at a molecular level.
Wait, she's manipulating molecules with her mind. That sounds incredibly difficult for anyone, let alone a teenager.
It is exponentially more difficult than just finding a rock. If her concentration slips for a single microsecond, the lattice fractures and the crystal is useless, or worse, it explodes when you turn the power on.
Oh, wow.
It requires a level of mental discipline and multitasking that is frankly absurd for her age. She is essentially meditating while monitoring a volatile chemical reaction in real time.
That is wild. It shows she trusts her own engineering skills way more than she trusts nature.
Precisely. She wants to remove the variables. If you find a crystal in a cave, it might have hidden impurities. If you make it yourself, you know exactly what is in it. The result is a violet blade. And if we look at color theory for a second, violet is often a mix of blue, representing the guardian, and red, representing aggression or passion.
It fits her perfectly. She is the mechanic, but she's also a fighter. Okay, so Jane is playing chemist. Then you have her twin brother, Jason. He goes a completely different route. He's the collector, the sentimental one. He pulls out a gem he's been saving.
Jason uses a Koruska gem. Now, we need to talk about what that is, because a Koruska gem isn't just a fancy word for a diamond. These are incredibly rare. They are formed in the lower atmosphere of Yavin Prime.
Which is the gas giant that Yavin 4 orbits, right?
Yeah. Yes. So imagine the unimaginable pressure required to crush carbon into a gem in the swirling, high-gravity storms of a gas giant. These gems are harder than Durasteel. They are incredibly potent focusing agents. Jason acquired this from Lando Calrissian's Gem Diver Station, which is a whole other adventure entirely.
But the key here is the sentiment. He almost gave it to his mother, Leia.
He did. He offered it to Leia as a gift, and she told him to keep it for a special purpose. So for Jason, this isn't just a rock. It represents his connection to his family, his history, his adventures with Lando. He's literally building a weapon out of memories.
That is so Jason. He's all about connection to living things in his past. And the blade turns out emerald green, matching Luke's. Then we have Lobaka, the Wookiee. He's the nephew of Chewbacca. He's a scavenger at heart.
Lobaka does something very resourceful. He scours the ruins of the great temple on Yavin. Remember, this temple was the rebel base years ago. It's full of old, discarded tech. He finds a lens and a jewel from an old rebel projection system.
A projection system, like a tactical map projector.
Basically, yeah. He repurposes optical technology used to display tactical maps to fight the Empire, and he uses it to build a weapon to defend the New Republic. There is a beautiful thematic symmetry there.
He is taking the tools of the past rebellion and forging the future.
Exactly. His blade ends up being this molten bronze, gold color. It's very unique, very distinct.
I love the bronze blade idea. It feels very earthy, very Wookiee. And then they get to Tenel Ka.
Tenel Ka, the warrior princess of Hapes and Dathomir.
Her approach is, well, aggressive. Let's talk about the handle first. She wants a handle made from a rancor tooth. And not just any rancor, but her grandmother's favorite rancor from Dathomir.
It is a massive statement piece. But let's look at the actual mechanics of that. A rancor tooth is bone. It's calcium phosphate, essentially. It is organic material. Carving that out to fit a power cell, an emitter matrix, and the necessary insulation is a nightmare compared to just using a standard metal tube.
Wouldn't bone burn? I mean, the emitter gets incredibly hot, right?
It would need significant internal shielding. But Tenel Ka doesn't care about the difficulties. She cares about the symbolism. She views brute strength and natural power as superior to technology. She is actively rejecting the civilized metal hilt for something primal.
And then there are the crystals. She goes to a volcanic lava tube to harvest them. She braves the heat. She uses the force to keep the lava back. It's very dramatic. But here's where it gets interesting and incredibly tragic. She finds the crystals, but she notices something.
Yes.
They have flaws. The text describes them as hazy.
This is the critical moment. She holds these crystals up to the light. She sees the imperfections. Any other Jedi, Jaina, Luke, even Jason, would have tossed them aside and looked for better ones. But Tenel Ka is impatient.
What goes through her head here? Why use a broken part for a deadly weapon?
It's hubris, pure and simple. She relies on her physical strength and her core philosophy that the warrior matters more than the weapon. She essentially tells herself that she is strong enough to compensate for a faulty tool. She thinks her will can override the laws of physics.
That is such a teenage mindset. Like, I got this, it'll be fine.
Exactly. She builds the lightsaber with the flawed crystals anyway. She creates a gray-white blade that crackles with static. It is unstable from day one. It even makes a different sound, a rougher hum. But she ignores the warning signs because she trusts her own strength too much. She thinks the roughness makes it cooler, more Dathomiri.
And that sets the stage for the tragedy in segment 2. The training wheels are officially off. Luke takes them out to a clearing. He brings out these remote droids for target practice. But he makes them wear helmets with red visors that block out everything except the red spectrum.
So the remotes are completely invisible to the naked eye.
Right. They have to use the force to sense them.
It is classic Jedi training, depriving the physical senses to heighten force awareness. They all do reasonably well. Tenel Ka actually uses her hearing to track the mechanical hum of the remotes, again relying on her physical senses alongside the force. She is always looking for that physical edge.
But then Luke pairs them up for dueling. Jason versus Tenel Ka. Now, these two are friends. There's a bit of a spark there, maybe. Jason is definitely trying to impress her. He's telling bad jokes.
Oh, the jokes are painful.
Well, let's hear it.
He says, "Why does a Wampa snow monster have such long arms? Because his hands are so far away from his body."
Wow, that is terrible.
It is, but it shows his state of mind. He's loose, he's having fun, he's showing off for her. But Tenel Ka, she is deadly serious. She is intensely focused. She wants to win the spar.
So they start fighting, and it escalates.
Yeah.
They aren't just tapping blades. They are really going for it. Jason is using the force to trip her, to throw dirt in her face. He's using every trick in the book to try and get an advantage.
And Tenel Ka is responding with raw athleticism. She's leaping over obstacles, closing the distance instantly. It becomes a pure contest of strength. They lock blades. Jason's emerald beam pressed hard against Tenel Ka's unstable gray-white one. They are pushing against each other with everything they have.
And this is the moment. Physics meets philosophy. You have Tenel Ka pouring all her physical might into this lockup. She is physically stronger than Jason. She's winning the shoving match.
But her crystal, that flawed, hazy volcanic rock she insisted was good enough, cannot handle the energy output required to hold back Jason's emerald blade. The feedback loop inside the casing spikes massively.
Walk us through what happens next, the mechanics of the failure.
The source text describes a sharp crack and a loud hissing sizzle. It's the sound of the containment field collapsing. Tenel Ka's blade doesn't just retract, it winks out, it vanishes. It simply ceases to exist.
Oh man, so there is zero resistance suddenly.
Exactly. Jason is leaning into the strike with all his weight. His blade is effectively a rod of plasma. When the resistance disappears, he follows through. There is no time to react, no time to pull the blow. His blade plunges through the empty air where her blade used to be and slices right through her left arm just above the elbow.
God. It's such a horrific subversion of the training accident trope. Usually someone gets a bruise or a slight burn. This is permanent maiming in the blink of an eye.
And the silence afterwards, that's what sticks with me. The lightsaber deactivates, the arm falls, and for a split second, nobody understands what changed. It's the end of childhood for both of them right there in the grass. Then the pain hits. Then the handle of her saber explodes in her severed hand.
Because the energy finally cascaded out. Luke rushes her to the medical bay.
Yeah.
And the aftermath of this is heartbreaking. The arm cannot be reattached. It was an explosion and a cauterized cut. The nerve damage is just too extensive.
Yeah.
But Tenel Ka does something that I think divides a lot of people reading this. They offer her a prosthetic, a high-tech robotic arm that would be just as good as the real thing, maybe even stronger. And she outright refuses.
She does, and this connects deeply back to her core beliefs. She feels that the accident was a direct result of her haste and her arrogance. She believes she must live with the consequences.
But hold on. Is that bravery, or is that just stubborn teenage rebellion? Like, I don't want your help, I'll do it myself. It feels almost suicidal for a warrior to handicap herself like that when a perfect replacement is right there.
That is a very valid critique. And Luke actually pushes her on this. He shares his own trauma. He talks about losing his hand to Vader and that terrible feeling of becoming more machine. He tries to tell her that accepting help isn't weakness.
He's living proof of that.
Right. But Tenel Ka is adamant. She views the robotic arm as another tool that she might end up relying on too much. She wants to feel the loss every single day so she never forgets the lesson. Do not rush. Respect the weapon.
It's extreme ownership. Brutal, but I guess effective for her. And poor Jason. He is absolutely crushed. He's plagued by nightmares. He smells the singed flesh in his dreams. He feels like he attacked her, even though it was entirely a mechanical failure.
It is an incredibly heavy burden. Guilt is a very fast path to the dark side if it's not managed, and Jason is drowning in it. He feels completely responsible. He questions whether he pushed too hard. He questions his own jokes. He just shuts down.
While this tragedy is unfolding on Yavin 4, we have to look at the flip side. Segment 3, the Shadow Academy. Because while Tenel Ka is lying in a med bay learning that actions have permanent consequences, someone else is being taught that consequences are only for the weak.
Zek, the street kid from Coruscant.
Yeah, let's talk about Zek. He was friends with the twins in the earlier lore, but he always felt like the outsider. He's an orphan, he scavenges for a living, the trash collector, people called him.
He has a massive inferiority complex. He feels abandoned by Jason and Jaina because they went off to be famous Jedi at this prestigious academy and he was left behind in the slums to rot. The Shadow Academy, specifically the Dark Jedi Master Baracus and the Night Sister Tenel Ka, exploit that wound perfectly.
They see right through him.
They do. They don't offer him peace. They offer him superiority. They groom him over time. They feed his ego. They tell him he is naturally stronger than the twins.
And the contrast in training is stark. The Jedi students had to scavenge and build their lightsabers. It took weeks. It required meditation, facing their flaws.
Yeah.
What happens with Zek?
Baracus simply walks up to him and hands him one. He produces a dark, ornate cylinder and gives it to Zek. It creates a brilliant scarlet blade. Baracus says, through the dark side, many things are easier.
That is the ultimate seduction. Here's the power you want. No work required.
Exactly. Zek is given power instantly. He didn't earn it. He didn't understand the components. He didn't meditate on the crystal in a furnace. He just pushed a button. Yeah. It is the complete antithesis of the Jedi way. It's a cheat code to power.
And Zek takes to it. He becomes their star pupil. But then comes his final test. The Shadow Academy needs a leader for their Dark Jedi, a Darkest Knight. So they pit Zek against his main rival, a Dathomiri boy named Velas.
Velas is actually from the same planet as Tenel Ka, which is a nice narrative parallel. He's a brute. And the setting for this duel is fantastic. A zero-gravity chamber filled with floating debris. Crates, rocks, junk.
A zero-G lightsaber fight sounds incredibly chaotic. How do you even fight without footing?
You had to push off walls, use the force to propel yourself. It's true 3D combat. Velas is ruthless. He damages Zek's pressure suit early on. Zek even loses his lightsaber at one point and goes drifting off into the void.
So he's unarmed, floating in space, running out of air with a maniac coming at him. How does he survive?
He uses his cunning. He realizes he can't just outmuscle Velas in zero-G. He hides behind some floating debris. He uses the force not to push Velas, but to throw a sound, a ventriloquist trick. He makes a noise behind Velas.
The oldest trick in the book. Hey, look over there.
It works perfectly because Velas is all aggression and zero awareness. Velas turns toward the sound, and Zek summons his lightsaber back to his hand and strikes.
And he kills him. He doesn't disarm him. He doesn't knock him out.
He slices Velas in two. It's a brutal, definitive kill. And the reaction from the gallery is chilling. The crowd cheers. A hologram of the Emperor Palpatine himself appears and crowns Zek his Darkest Knight.
So we have these two parallel tracks happening at the same time. Tenel Ka loses an arm because of her own haste, but accepts the consequence to learn from it. Zek rejects weakness takes the easy power, kills his rival, and loses his humanity.
That is the core thematic conflict right there. Painful growth versus destructive power. Tenel Ka is becoming a Jedi through loss. Zek is becoming something much darker through gain.
So back to Tenel Ka. She's injured, she's refusing the robotic arm, and her family comes to pick her up. And this is where we find out who she really is. We knew she was from Dathomir, but that's only half the story.
Right. She is the heir to the Hapes Consortium. The Hapes Cluster is a massively wealthy region of space, 63 worlds, isolated by a nebula. It is matriarchal, incredibly rich, and incredibly treacherous. Her grandmother, Tachum, is the former Queen Mother.
Talk about a shift in scenery. We go from the humid, ancient jungle temples of Yavin to the Fountain Palace on Hapes. It's all luxury, fountains, shimmering lights, opulent clothes, but the vibe is, it's just cold.
It is icy. Hapan politics are notoriously cutthroat. Assassination is practically a sport there. Ta Chum is a master manipulator. She sees Tenel Ka's injury not as a personal tragedy, but as a political opportunity.
How so? You'd think she'd be devastated her granddaughter is maimed.
She thinks, good. The girl has lost an arm. She can't be a Jedi warrior anymore. Now she has to give up that foolishness and be a politician like me. She wants a pliable heir, not a Jedi.
She is awful. She even has this sycophant, Ambassador Ifra, hovering around agreeing with everything. Tenel Ka is miserable. She feels helpless. There's this scene where she can't even braid her own warrior braids with one hand.
It is a moment of deep depression for her. She feels she has lost her identity. She isn't a Jedi anymore, and she desperately doesn't want to be a queen. She's in limbo. But then the cavalry arrives. Luke brings Jason, Jaina, and Loie to visit.
And we get that reconciliation scene. Jason is so awkward. He wants to apologize, but he doesn't know how to approach her. He tries to tell a joke again.
And this time, it works. Tenel Ka laughs. It's the first time she has genuinely laughed at one of his bad jokes. It breaks the tension completely. She takes full responsibility for the faulty crystal. She forgives him explicitly. It's the beginning of her healing process. She stops being a victim of the accident and starts being a survivor.
But Grandma Tachum isn't done playing games. She decides to test Tenel Ka. She forces her to arbitrate a diplomatic dispute to prove she should give up this Jedi nonsense and rule. And this is a part of the lore I think is really underrated. It shows Tenel Ka isn't just a physical brute.
The dispute is between the Marins, who are these aquatic, tentacled aliens, and the Virgil miners. The Marins claim the miners are polluting their water and making too much noise near their consulate.
On the surface, this sounds like a slam dunk case. Big bad mining corporation versus helpless nature lovers. The grandmother totally expects Tenel Ka to either get confused by the legalese or just side with the aliens out of sympathy.
But Tenel Ka acts like a detective here. She doesn't look at the emotional appeals. She looks at the hard facts. She digs into the public records. And this is the gotcha moment. She finds the survey dates.
What does she find exactly?
The miners had their claims staked and publicized 3 years before the Marins ever broke ground on their consulate.
Wait, so it's a zoning dispute?
It is. It reveals the Marins' true intent. They intentionally built their consulate next to a known mineral vein, waited for the miners to show up and start working, and then cried foul to sue for damages or political concessions. It was a classic shakedown.
That is incredibly sneaky.
Very. And Tenel Ka calls them out on it in front of everyone. She rules against the Marins. She tells them, you move next to the mine, deal with the noise, or move. It proves to you, as the reader, and to her grandmother, that being a warrior isn't just about swinging a sword. It's about ruthlessness in the pursuit of truth. She cuts through the deception just like she used to use her lightsaber.
Even Grandma is impressed by that. But the danger isn't over. Ambassador Ifra suggests the kids go for a relaxing trip in a wayspeeder to celebrate.
And this leads us to segment 5, the sabotage. Ifra programs the boat's autopilot to take them on a one-way trip into a very dangerous part of the ocean.
The seaweed monster. I laughed when I first heard the name, but the description is actually terrifying.
It is a massive field of carnivorous seaweed. The descriptions are intense. It has red eye flowers that physically track movement. It has thorny tentacles that can crush a hull. It smells like rotting fish. And the boat just drives them right into the middle of it and locks the controls.
This is nightmare scenario. The boat gets stuck in the thick mat of weeds. The tentacles start grabbing them. Jason gets grabbed and is being pulled over the side. Loie is hacking away with his new bronze lightsaber. But Tenel Ka, she's unarmed. She doesn't have a saber anymore.
This is her defining moment. She has one arm, she has no lightsaber, but she realizes she is not helpless. She grabs a throwing dagger. She uses her athleticism to balance on the slippery pitching rail of the speeder. She spots the exact tentacle holding Jason, and she throws.
Bullseye.
She severs the vine perfectly. The warrior matters more than the weapon. She proves her own philosophy right. She reclaims her confidence right there. She realizes that losing an arm didn't take away her courage, her aim, or her skill.
They manage to hack their way out and escape back to shore. But when they get back to their base, Reef Fortress, things go from bad to catastrophic. Segment 6. The Siege.
Reef Fortress is supposed to be incredibly safe. It's an isolated island stronghold. But the shield generator is destroyed by explosives. The power is cut, and they are attacked by Bartok assassins.
I really want to geek out on the Bartoks for a second because they are a really cool sci-fi concept. They are insectoid, right?
Right.
But it's the hive mind that makes them truly scary.
Yes. They share a collective consciousness. They are physically separate bodies, but they share one mind. If you are hiding in a closet and one Bartok sees you, all of them see you instantly. There is absolutely no element of surprise once you're spotted.
And they are relentless.
They don't have self-preservation instincts like individuals do. If one has to die to wedge open a blast door for the others, it does it without hesitation. Their target is Ta Chum, the grandmother. They are there to wipe out the royal line.
So the lights go out. It's a physical fight in the dark. Jason and Jaina and Loie have their lightsabers, so they're these spinning beacons of light in the hallway. Tenel Ka grabs a ceremonial spear off the wall. She's fighting one-handed against giant bugs.
And doing a great job of it. But the hive mind biology makes the Bartoks incredibly hard to kill. Jason beheads one, and the body keeps moving.
Wait, how does it keep moving without a head?
Distributed nervous system. The brain isn't just in the head. The neural ganglia are spread throughout the body. You cut off the head. The legs still want to kick you to death. Loie eventually has to just pick them up and physically throw them out of the high windows into the sea.
But there are too many of them. They are swarming the fortress. The group is trapped in the high tower. They have to escape. And this leads to one of the coolest action sequences in the source material, the rappel.
They have to climb down the sheer face of the fortress to get to the ocean below. Tenel Ka uses her grappling hook. Loie goes first to anchor the rope. Then the twins, Tenel Ka and her grandmother, go last.
And the tension here is crazy. The Bartoks break into the room. They see the rope, and they start sawing at it with their claws, while Tenel Ka is still dangling hundreds of feet in the air.
This is where Tenel Ka integrates everything she has learned. The rope snaps, she is falling, she has one arm holding on to her grandmother, she can't reach out to grab a new handhold, so she uses the force, not to fight, but to cushion.
She creates a bubble of air.
Essentially, yes. She slows their descent just enough so they hit the water without breaking every bone in their bodies. It's a beautiful example of her adapting. She can't hold the rope with two hands, so she uses the force as her second hand.
They hit the water, scale a wave speeder, and the chase is on. The Bartoks have a heavy assault craft. They are chasing them through the dragon's teeth, these massive, jagged rocks in the ocean.
Jaina is piloting. She's a great pilot, taking after Han. She threads the needle through the rocks. The Bartok ship crashes into the rocks but just keeps coming. It's like a Terminator. It's heavily damaged, but relentless.
So Jaina does something brilliant. She weaponizes nature. She remembers the seaweed field.
It is the perfect trap. The Bartok assassins are mindless in their pursuit. They don't analyze the environment. They only care about reaching the target. Jaina flies the small speeder right over the top of the seaweed. The heavy assault craft follows right behind.
And Ta Chum, the grandmother, gets the final moment. She has a tiny holdout blaster, like a little pearl-handled pistol.
She shoots the repulsor lift engine of the Bartok ship. It falters. It drops a few meters closer to the water.
And the seaweed grabs it.
The monster does the rest. The ship is dragged down. The Bartoks are consumed by the vines. The threat is completely neutralized.
Talk about poetic justice. The trap meant for the kids becomes the tomb for the assassins.
It brings the story full circle perfectly. Tenel Ka saves her grandmother, proving her worth as a warrior, but she also uses her head, her friends, and her environment. She isn't just a blunt instrument anymore.
So we get to the outro of this deep dive. They return to the palace. It's pretty clear the assassination plot was linked to political rivals, probably Ambassador Yfra, though the material leaves it a bit open for the grandmother to handle internally.
Ta Chum will handle it, no doubt. She respects strength. Tenel Ka showed strength. Yfra failed. Yfra is probably going to have a very bad accident soon.
But the real resolution is internal. Tenel Ka refuses the mechanical arm again. She chooses to adapt. She accepts her dual heritage. She is a Hapan queen and a Dathomir warrior. She doesn't have to choose one or the other.
And the contrast with Zek is so important to remember as we close out. Tenel Ka accepts loss and grows stronger through adaptation. Zek rejects weakness, takes the easy path to power, and loses his soul.
It sets up the future conflict perfectly. Friends on opposite sides of the Force. One who built their strength through pain, and one who was given power to mask their pain.
It's a profound lesson.
So what does this all mean for us? Here's a provocative thought to leave you with. We live in a world of tools. Phones, computers, cars, our own versions of lightsabers and robotic arms. We use them to make us better, faster, stronger. We panic when the battery dies.
But this deep dive suggests that true strength comes from what remains when the technology fails. Tenel Ka's lightsaber broke, her arm was lost, but she was still a warrior.
If your tools broke today, if the internet went down, if your phone died, if you lost your weapon, who would you be? Would you be helpless? Or would you be like Tenel Ka, picking up a spear and fighting on?
That is the question. The warrior matters more than the weapon.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into young Jedi Knights. Lightsabers, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.
Always a pleasure.